Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Risk with Dr. Naveen Agarwal. Each week, we talk about a topic related to risk management of medical devices in a very casual and informal way. This is not a webinar or lecture. Rather, our goal is to talk about key topics and challenges in a very informal way and share best practices. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and I'm the principal and founder at Achieve, where my personal mission is to help you achieve success in risk management. My guest in this episode is Taylor Dieringer. He has many years of industry experience in risk management and post-market safety surveillance of medical devices. So he's the best person to have a conversation about challenges and some best practices, especially in the area of post-market safety surveillance. This area continues to be very challenging in practice, even though the requirements and standard practices have been very clearly outlined. We had this conversation as part of our weekly LinkedIn Live audio series. You're about to hear a recording of our discussion. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another session of our Let's Talk Risk conversation. I'm so happy to connect with you once again. We're going to have a very exciting conversation today, a topic which is very close to my heart, and something I think we find a little bit challenging in practice. This is a topic of post-market safety surveillance. I'm going to be talking in just a moment with my guest, Taylor Dieringer, today, who has been at it for many, many years in the real-world situations. So he has seen all the challenges and he has tried to figure things out that work for him. So we're going to hear from him in just a moment. But guys, know that this is a very casual conversation. This is more about engagement and participation from you, and you also sharing your specific experiences and insights. It's not just a one-way conversation or a webinar or a lecture. Intent here is for all of us to engage and share with each other our own unique perspectives. So I'll have a little bit of a focused conversation with Taylor for the first 10-15 minutes, and then we open the forum for you to participate. And all you have to do is raise your hand virtually, and I'll bring you on stage for a conversation. So with that, Taylor, I'm so excited to welcome you. Hello, how are you doing today?
Hi, Naveen. Yeah, thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I'm doing really well. This conversation is something I've been listening to for, it feels like, at least a year now. And I see some in the audience that I've had a pleasure of working with and those I haven't, and very happy to be connected with all of you today.
That's awesome, Taylor. So why don't you just start by briefly introducing yourself to our audience today?
Yeah, definitely. So Taylor Dieringer here. I have a background with biomedical engineering and have been working the last 10 years in the medical device industry, mostly on the design quality side of things, quality assurance, and risk management. More recently, have found myself becoming a bit more of an go-to in the organizations that I've been working with for risk management, and have the pleasure of speaking at some events, and then also being invited to this podcast. So yeah, like I was mentioned earlier, a lot of my experience is mostly from the post-market surveillance side. So really learning what we have from the field and bringing that back into our risk management file, which kind of brings us to the topic today related to the clause 10.3 of the standard. So that's why I'm here. I'm very excited to talk more on it.
Oh, that's great, Taylor. Let's start by just reviewing with people, our audience today, just reminding them what post-market surveillance is about very briefly. What do we do? What we are supposed to do?
Yeah, sure thing. So there's obviously, from the medical device reporting side of things, we need to make sure that when we receive any type of oral written communication, that is being investigated on an individual basis. And what I'm more involved in is learning what we can from those complaints, and then also being able to convert that information into usable data that can be brought back into the risk management file to make sure that it's a living, breathing document. So for those that are complying to 14971, it is important and required to bring that information in both from, like I said, the complaint side of things, but there's also other proactive and reactive material that we need to be collecting on a regular basis to make sure that we are continuously addressing risk acceptability of our device, as well as the state of the art and benefits that are provided.
That's awesome. And one of the key words, if I remember, in the standard is active. It has to be an active process. What is your understanding of that, Taylor? And in what way it proves to be challenging in practice to have an active surveillance process?
No, I think a big part of the medical device industry is obviously getting your device to market. And what I've seen in my experience is a little bit of issues with developing these risk management files upfront using a bottom-up approach typically. So identifying ways that your device fails, how we can mitigate those failures without understanding how this device, not only in a failed state, but also in a normal state, can impact our patients. So being able to understand when we review the information coming in from post-market surveillance that these are impacting real patients is something that seems to be missed early on. So in order to maintain an active file, we need to have a continuous pulse on the information that is out there when our device has commercialized, and not only for the current risk management file and ensuring that our device remains acceptable according to our definition of risk internally, but also how we can continuously improve those files for future devices and iterations.
So what I'm hearing you say is that through the post-market surveillance process, we are continually actually building our understanding of how our devices are being used, how they're interacting with the patients and the users, and what kind of problems are being experienced in the field that we may not have anticipated. So to me, it seems like it's a continual learning exercise in addition to satisfying these regulatory requirements. Like we are learning as an organization, as a team, what is happening in the real world. Is that a good understanding?
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. I think just to expand on that a little more too is oftentimes risk management is thought as a check the box activity, which we're, as a collective group here, trying to improve on across the industry. And I think by having that perspective of continuous improvement, continuous learning, we're able to take what we get and show more value to our organizations, that not only are we meeting regulatory requirements, but also that we are continuously improving our devices as a result.
Got you. So with this kind of big picture perspective, and I always like to set this up as why are we doing it? What is the reason? With this background, Taylor, I have a specific question for you, and I hope you can help our audience also understand this. One of the major challenges that I have seen and come across is this whole idea about setting up thresholds, some thresholds for action. What is your take on that? And is that even possible, first of all? And if so, what are some of the best practices around that?
Yeah, no, that is oftentimes something that is very challenging for someone that's trying to attack risk management fresh. And one of the things that I like to point to right away is the sister document to 14971, the technical report 24971, where it provides guidance in defining risk acceptability and how to set up a risk management matrix in a way that's tangible, not only to the design and development process, but also to the post-market surveillance process. Ideally, each of these individual thresholds, i.e., the severity and probability buckets, have well-defined barriers, and that can be driven from many different sources. But typically what you want to rely on is your device itself, different types of searches that you can do for someone that's starting fresh. You want to use all the information that you have out there. So whether that be on database searches, current regulations or standards that exist for your device, as well as any clinical data of competitors that you have out there, will help you estimate what these thresholds should be. Once you meet your commercialization phase, that's when you need to continuously trend these specific complaint buckets that have been set up in a way that every time that they trigger, it is a meaningful trigger. So I've seen it both ways, where you don't get enough triggers or you have too many triggers, and you need to adjust those thresholds very frequently in order to make sure that you have a true understanding of what's happening with your device in the field.
Oh, that is such a beautiful way you have, I think, shared the experience in the real world, that sometimes we have too many triggers, or sometimes we don't have as many triggers, and we have to get better. We have to constantly get better. So 2 key points I want to summarize for our audience. One is, before we go out to commercialization, we should have a good idea about what those thresholds would be, some anticipated number based on our collective experience, whatever information we can get. And then we need to continually revise them based on actual data coming in from the field. Is that a good way of summarizing what we just talked about?
Absolutely, yes.
So really, in a moment, I will open the floor for conversation. I've also done a fair amount of work in this area, and I'd like to encourage people to start thinking in terms of safety signals. We have to get better at detecting safety signals and evaluating them, confirming them, and then appropriately escalating them. So this could be actually a trigger from only a couple of complaints that actually is maybe new enough, maybe serious enough for you to start considering. So I think we should start moving away from the notion of the statistical threshold or a numerical number. Those are important, but on top of it, we also have to have a way of evaluating them. That has been my experience. Is there something you can share in that area, Taylor, maybe using a specific example for our audience, how you go about doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from the statistical side of things, that is obviously a very important piece of post-market surveillance. And just from not only keeping a pulse on the data, but also when we get audited from the post-market surveillance side of it, what our post-market surveillance plan has, making sure that that data is effective. Those are all pieces that are extremely important. But that's not what we should only hang our hat on. Like I mentioned earlier on, there's both proactive and reactive sources of post-market surveillance data that plan should be pointing to. And we need to make sure that these investigations look at it from these statistical thresholds, but also on an individual basis. On individual complaints, are we seeing new hazards? Are we, and if that is the case, how are we escalating those properly to the expert on the team, and so that we can meet that cross-functional group, and then make sure that the appropriate action is being taken from a regulatory and risk management standpoint.
Yeah, and you mentioned this very important point of cross-functional. This is a cross-functional exercise. So we need to be talking to our complaints handling specialists who are knee-deep, day after day after day, they are looking at individual complaints. And by the way, I think they're like our weathermen. They are the ones who spot some of the signals emerging because they have this background knowledge. And if we talk to them, even informally, they might be able to say, I've been hearing a lot about this lately. I haven't heard this before. So some of those casual conversations can also be helpful. But to emphasize your point again, is that it's a cross-functional activity, not just a single function. So on that point, Taylor, can you share some tips or best practices about how to set up that cross-functional team?
Yeah, most definitely. Typically when we're talking about complaints, oftentimes we kind of get siloed in that post-market surveillance department. But we want to make sure that the procedures are set up in such a way that when specific triggers are hit, whether that be as a result of statistics or something found in an individual complaint, there is a communication path that is easily accessible to everyone on that team in order to escalate the issue to a larger team. And those triggers can vary depending on device classification or other means. But I guess having that cross-functional group is something that needs to be set up during the design transfer commercialization phase. Part of that post-market surveillance plan should identify what functions are required for that review, and then making sure that we're setting up appropriate timeliness, and then also time period reviews to go over that data. It's been something that I've been heavily involved with as well.
Oh, so this is such an important point. I think I want to highlight that once again. What I'm hearing you say is that do it up front at design transfer, maybe at launch, at commercialization. Set it up front. Tell people this is going to be the way. This is going to be the team. And this is how frequently we're going to meet and evaluate all the data and other information to make this judgment. So very quickly, Taylor, do you have any recommendations on at least a couple of few key functional resources that you should involve in this cross-functional team? What are some of the most important ones?
Absolutely. Having some type of medical professional involved, some type of clinician on the team is very important for making sure the proper severity is defined. Also regulatory to make sure that when we're assessing the risk, any type of recall action is considered and justified with proper rationale. Also having someone from the product development side is extremely important to make sure that all controls that are related to the issue are being considered and are continuously effective. And then also someone from quality assurance is also key. And then the original complaint investigator is usually on the team.
So I'm hearing you say medical professionals, I'm hearing you say product developers, quality folks, complaints handling specialists. And, since not everybody is that knee-deep into statistics, maybe involve some people who do data analysis and statistics in your company. So fantastic. I think we have gained so much from you already, Taylor, in the short span of 15 minutes. And it's perfect time for me to start inviting some conversations. Bijan, you are requesting to speak, so I'm going to bring you on board. Guys, also, you don't have to wait your turn. Just raise your hand, and I'm going to bring as many people as I can. I can bring up to 10 people, I think. And we'll go one by one, sharing our conversations and insights. So, Bijan, you're on. Please share what you have in mind.
Hi, Taylor. Wanted to say hello. This is Bijan. I wanted to also tell the audience that it is my pleasure to tell you that Taylor will be one of the speakers at the first international conference on medical device risk management.
Nice.
Which is going to happen on the 22nd of April in Minneapolis. Taylor will talk about practical strategies for integrating post-market trending with risk management.
Lovely.
And I've seen a preview of his presentation. It's an excellent presentation. Don't miss it.
Awesome. And, and we have had a preview now, right? We know so much we can gain from Taylor. So it's going to be a fantastic presentation. So Bijan, you have also been very active in this area and you have a lot of know-how and expertise. Do you have any other insights to kind of add to what we have talked about?
No, I think Taylor really touched on it pretty well. It's a joint activity between pre-market and post-market. It is a living process. It continues forever for as long as the product is in the market. And you make discoveries based on your observations of post-market surveillance data that should contribute to improving your products in the pre-market. We sometimes in pre-market, we make predictions on what things could go wrong, what hazards could arise, but sometimes we discover new things. So it should be a joint activity between pre and post market.
Yeah, and I to be honest with you guys, that is where I have seen a lot of challenge where we don't have access to the cross-functional resources we need to understand the data, to understand the signals, and to escalate. Many times I've seen that our best engineers, they move on to the next new product that they have to work on. And in the post-market phase, it's very difficult to get those resources. Maybe we don't have in-house medical resources to actually look at the patient view. So it becomes very challenging. Again, I want to throw this out for any best practices you guys can share with us for a risk practitioners who is managing the risk process, how they can ensure availability of resources. So it's an open question. Taylor, Bijan, whatever you want to share. I think this is an important point for us to maybe talk about. Anybody? Okay. Roger, you have requested to speak and I've brought you on. So please go ahead and share what you have in mind. And we'll come back on this topic in a little bit.
So I just wanted to comment that in answering your last question, what I've seen work in a couple of companies is there was a monthly risk management review, and I would call this a review of trending. Mm-hmm. They had a representative from all the teams that were mentioned already in there, as well as manufacturing was also in these teams, and the presenters went. And I should say this was run by quality with a focus on what's happening in the field. Mm-hmm. And they reviewed a number of complaints that came in on the given month versus the previous months altogether. Mm-hmm. And the point was to bring up any conversations if, one, there was a new type of failure that hadn't been seen before, or that if there seemed to be an uptick, and I say seem to be, mm-hmm. because when you're looking at it month to month, it may or may not really be an uptick. But I guess what I thought they were very valuable and there were well-run meetings, some quick conversations came up, mm-hmm. and for new members of the design team that could come in and basically sit in the background and listen to this, so you could learn a great deal. Mm-hmm. Right away from listening to some of the back and forth discussions between the functional groups. And at this meeting too, there was some senior folks who had the authority to ask for a deeper dive into one particular topic or another. I thought that worked very, very well.
Wonderful.
In those meetings. And then, of course, there's a cultural buy-in to it in the first place.
So, Roger, this is awesome because what you're describing is a structure. It is not ad hoc. It is not random. It is not left to chance. What you're describing is a structure that has been established, and there is some sort of governance around it, right?
Absolutely. Right? We looked forward as a working engineer. I looked forward to that meeting, and I look forward to a similar type meeting which just had to do with manufacturing.
Oh, so Roger, one day I'm going to talk to you more about this because many people I know don't want to sit in these meetings. Right? You are telling me something.
Many people I know don't want to sit into them.
Right. What you are telling me is awesome because many people just say, here's another meeting. I'm going to look at some data, some charts, blah, blah, blah. What is next? So this would be a nice conversation to have, how to encourage that feeling of excitement in these meetings, because that's when I think we're going to make progress. So hang in there for a minute. Christy, you have joined us. Welcome. And I want to invite you to share your thoughts.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to ask really Taylor, Bijan, or Roger. So I work with a lot of startups and really small companies that don't do their own manufacturing. They use contract manufacturing organizations. And I'm interested in your best practices for how to, once you launch the product, and you still have your contract manufacturing organization engaged, how do you keep them integrated into your risk management team, both with what to do when they find new risks in the manufacturing process, which always happens as a very young product matures and you learn more, and then also just as you're doing investigations for complaints, how do you keep them engaged with the investigation process, working at different companies?
This is a wonderful question, Christy. I'm going to start with Taylor first and definitely invite comments from Bijan and Roger as well. So Taylor, go ahead if you would like to take this on.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christy, for asking the question. I think that is a very big challenge, is having a contract manufacturer, obviously not located where your day-to-day work is being done. I think early on, again, coming back up into the planning phases is making sure that maybe even having in the quality agreement set up with the supplier as part of that file to make sure that there is a single person, a middleman for that company who acts as basically an account manager to make sure that all of our needs are being met. Mm-hmm. And then also just setting them up for expectation for the post-market phase, what they're signing on for. As you mentioned, with supplier quality, it's extremely important to make sure that the failures in the field are brought down to component level sometimes, and we need to make sure that they're aware of that early on in the supplier quality phases.
Now, a lot of things that I think, Taylor, you're mentioning might be easier to execute in a sort of well-organized, good-sized organization. And I think to Christy's point, how do you do it in a small a very early stage organization where too many things are happening at the same time. I guess what I would like to say is that knowing what needs to be done is important first, and then trying to make a system, make a process that could work appropriately. But I would love to have Bijan and Roger also, pitch in and share if they have any insights in this area.
I can sure explain what I've seen. I work for a very small company right now.
Go ahead.
Less than 20 people. Our manufacturing is done by subcontract. Mm-hmm. And I'd like to think that we have good relations with them because, as was mentioned, we did a good job of picking a subcontractor who is, first, they're not gigantic. We're a small company. They're bigger than us, but they are attentive. Mm-hmm. They seem to have a good system. I mean, you can pick up so much just by when you go on your site tour and you look at the quality metrics that they have up on the wall, you know that they're paying attention to things. But we've seen, we do the trending of how our product is working on the field. When there's any issue or a suspicion of an issue, we pick up the phone and pick up our counterparts. And in our case, they have the same velocity. They're very quick to answer with us and work with us. And this goes both ways. If they find something is very difficult to manufacturing, they don't hesitate to call us and ask for us to consider changing something in that manufacturing process. Maybe it's been then the luck of who we've picked, but if to me the first thing is that constant communication. Do they quickly call you back on an issue? Are they willing to do things that you want them to do, and vice versa? You need to support them as well, which I've seen more in the past. Design companies not supporting their contract manufacturers, and all sorts of things can happen.
So it's a relationship. It's a relationship. Yes. Go ahead, Christy. Go ahead, please.
That just also makes me think that, and in my experiences, this has been true, working with CMOs is that they're more inclined to share risks and improve the program and have open communication if they themselves understand the clinical use and some of the clinical risks of if the device malfunctions, which is a little bit outside a traditional scope for a CMO to have that lens with risk management. I think a lot of times it's just this could result in a product malfunction, but if they understand the clinical impact, they're more likely probably to pay more attention and be more open and collaborative.
I'd like to add a couple points here too.
Sure.
So one thing is that my takeaway from Christy's comment was that what if something is discovered in manufacturing? So the direction from the contract manufacturer back to the customer. And as Section 10 of ISO 14971 talks about, post-market risk management is about both production and post-production activities. So this would be the production part. And Taylor touched on this, that the quality agreement should stipulate that the types and the quantity of communication that has to go between the supplier, the contract manufacturer, and the customer. If they make a discovery, that they should notify the customer about what has gone wrong in the production of that product. And then to touch on Christy's point about does the contract manufacturer know about the impact of such failures on patient safety? And to that, what I talked about is the connection between the failure modes and effects analysis that's done at the CMO and the failure modes and effects analysis that's done at the customer site or manufacturer of record.
That's awesome.
They need to be connected.
Yeah.
They need to be connected. And if they are, then the contract manufacturer will know what is the severity of a failure of the product.
There's the context. So, of course, a lot of the things can be done through agreements and contracts, but what I'm sensing in a small operation, a small company environment, I think relationships are also very important. And Roger, what you mentioned, they should feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling you, and you should feel comfortable picking up the phone and calling them. Build those relationships in addition to these formal agreements. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
yes, it does to me.
So, Christy, I think to your point, bringing it back to small companies, maybe create that environment and culture and understanding of nurturing these relationships, working with the CMOs to say, hey, we are in it together. If our patients are hurt, your business will also be hurt, right? We are in it together, make it worthwhile. And that takes some effort for sure. So guys, fantastic conversation once again. And we are now running out of time. So Taylor, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to just synthesize your thoughts and share some key takeaway points for us. But in the meantime, I'm going to really share a few announcements with our audience. Guys, I want to let you know that I will be actually conducting a full webinar very soon on benefit risk evaluation using FDA guidance. I'm going to actually do a step-by-step process and walk through of how to do this. I learned a lot in doing it, and I want to share that with you. So if you're interested in attending this webinar, reach out to me and I'll share with you how you can participate. Second point is, especially for those of you who are new, a recording of all of our conversations is available to you on the Let's Talk Risk website. And if you go into this event link that we are now participating in, the first comment actually gives you the link where you can subscribe for free if you want and get access to all the past recordings of our conversations. And the final point, which I always say, is that all of you, without exception in my mind, have some unique insights to share. Again, this is not about, one-way communication. It's like if you are willing to share your perspective and insights, you are welcome as a guest speaker on this particular conversation. So reach out to me, express interest, and be available and join the community. With that, Taylor, floor is open. If you could share with us just a couple of key bullet points that we can remember.
Yeah, for sure. First and foremost, just want to again thank you, Naveen, for putting together this format. It's been absolutely invaluable to tune in every Friday and get just a pulse on what the industry is going on, connecting with other professionals as well. In regards to post-market surveillance, there's obviously way too much to talk about in this short 30-minute window. But some of the things that we kind of touched on is just making sure that risk management from the safety perspective is we're making safe and effective devices that are improving patient lives. And I think that was kind of the main topic, is how are these small pieces can make sure that we have a living, breathing risk management file that ensures that is happening. And then one just small thing I wanted to add, if some people are struggling to see how 14971 can be applied to their own quality management system, there's also a technical report 20416 that goes a little bit deeper into how that can be linked. So I appreciate being on here, and thanks again, Naveen.
Thank you, Taylor, and thanks for sharing that reference with our audience today. A lot of resources available. And final point I want to again emphasize to this conversation is it's a teamwork. Collaboration, teamwork, and our ability to build these relationships will help us succeed. Guys, with that, awesome conversation. Once again, thank you for being a part of this wonderful experience. I continue to invite you to join us and be a part of this community. With that, have a good weekend ahead, guys, and we will see you once again next week. Take care, everybody.